not quite for dramatic effect, but anyway. Yeah, I've been waking up since about 3:30, 2:30, something like that. I don't know. Some days you sleep through and don't even think, and some days you think a lot. Thinking is not always good in the morning. Ow, ow. That's just a little bit harsh. Usually I don't have that shining right in my eyes. But there we go. Perfect. Yeah, it's getting light outside. It's about 5:41 in the morning now. And the pillow is wet from sweating on it, so that's never good. Alright, let's get the day going. I guess the good news is sleeping on top of the bed. You don't have to make the bed, right? Last night, took a shower. This is most of the shower that used to be in the school bus, and then I've got some additions to it now. And then in the bottom is a black, I think 17-gallon tote. This is from Walmart. I don't know, I've seen people use them for parties. You throw all your beer and your ice in there, but I think officially it's called a toy holder. So you give one to each of your kids and they throw all their toys in there. That yellow bucket is full of the scummy, soapy shower water. Apparently plants don't mind soap, so it's essentially gray water irrigation. So I just, before the water drains out of the little tub, I scoop some of it into that bucket, and then it sits here overnight, and you kind of smell it a little bit. And then the next day, that'll go out and get dumped on the garden, so that's a couple gallons. Up here, this is off of the DC wiring system. These power strips, or screw terminals I should say, are wired back to the battery. I've got DC lighting, but I'm also currently running AC lighting. But this is a voltmeter. That says 11.5. I'm not sure if that's going to show up on camera from way back there, but running a solar system and batteries, I am probably more aware of voltage throughout the day than I am of like my gas gauge when I had a truck. That's the best analogy. You do not want to run out of power, right? And you'll make decisions. How can I stretch that out a little more? First thing in the morning, this is the biggest problem with getting up too early. If I don't have enough power and I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning instead of 6 or 6:30, then I'm like, well, shoot, what am I going to do for the next hour and a half? I can't even turn the lights on some mornings. It's just too dark. One way to stretch things out, though, is by doing things the day before. So, for instance, it's a pretty clean coffee cup. I made coffee yesterday. You brew a pot of coffee the day before, either when you have good solar or if you do have to run the generator, do everything else at the same time. Now you got coffee and you didn't waste any power first thing in the morning. Yeah, that's perfect. If you were like I was when I first started out here, I was working in town, so I went to town every day. So some things weren't that big of a deal, like for instance propane. Propane is wonderful out here. So if you look underneath the table, there's my 15-pound propane tank. That runs up to my propane stove. And I'm not going into the big city every day. Eventually I'll run out of propane. Then I gotta, talk to a friend of mine who's going into town and said, hey, take me into town with you. Let's go get some more propane. Okay, And that's not a big deal. Most people out here are pretty happy to help you out. But I kind of just would like to not have to do that very often. And, if you think about it, if I can do things with electricity, solar is renewable. If the sun shines most days, then I don't have to go get propane. I can just wait for the batteries to recharge, right? So what we do then, just shift it over here a little bit. This side is all electrical, so it's an electric 4-cup coffee maker. That's enough for one morning. I used to have I've got a 40-cup coffee maker. I used to brew that once or twice a week. Next to it, the hot plate, and next to that is the slow cooker. So a lot of days now, I am cooking beans, and then I'll cook some rice on the hot plate. Do that in the afternoon, you get plenty of power. But first thing in the morning, I'd like to have some oatmeal. So what I've been doing, as long as I got enough power, get the little one. Usually your little pans don't come with lids. Just so happened that this lid from my camping set is a good enough fit. This is a 2-cup container. This one is Ziploc brand. I always call it Tupperware, but you know it's not. So I look for the 1-cup mark on that. This is a Brita filter. Check for bugs. Sometimes the bugs crawl in there. Try to fish them out. Doesn't do any good to filter the water and then not see that there's a bug in there. So you put 1 cup in. Now here's the trick. If I don't have enough power, there is a video about this. This is officially a fan speed controller, but what it can do is it can reduce how much power goes through it, basically cutting the watt load down. No matter what the dial is set at, it'll run at 1200 watts and then it'll stop, and then run 1200 watts and then it stops. So when you first turn it on, it's going to take full power. You see the lights went dim. Alright, so I'm going to turn this on. Okay, now it will take longer to boil the water, and it'll take a few minutes, but that's okay, we got time. I might have enough. So if I can live frugally like eating oatmeal. But I've got the Wii booster up there, that's going to use a little bit of power. And then so the Wii Boost is a cell phone booster, and that comes out this little antenna here. That is sending cell phone signal to this, which is an LTE router, which is just starting to come online. And then that through Ethernet, which is wired internet, is coming out of here to this guy, which is my Wi-Fi router, which will send Wi-Fi. Okay, that just turned blue, that's good. Green is good, blue is good. And then that'll come down to the laptop. This one is a Chromebook. It runs Chrome operating system from Google. I like that for things like email because it uses very little power. It's closer to a cell phone than it is an actual laptop. I mean, it's got a keyboard and stuff, but this shows up, but it's 12 minutes after 6 now. So I'll just set that up here. 12 after 6, and it is 77 degrees right now, so that's not too bad. There we go, and we're live. We'll take a look and see how the how YouTube is doing. I try not to obsess on this too much, but I guess it's reassuring to see that things are sort of working. So the little ads that run on the videos, I get paid a small percentage. I sold my truck, so I no longer have to pay for tires, gas, insurance, license tags, that kind of stuff, right? I don't make very much money, but if I could stop doing the things that cost me money. My job in El Paso is about 100 miles from here. Okay. Well, it was costing me a fortune to get to work. So you're like, work is expensive. Dump the boiling water in, put the lid on it, and then just let it sit for a while, and then that'll cook the oatmeal, and you're good. Here's my kitchen sink setup. This was going to be a temporary thing, and the more I look at it, the more I like it. So, typical wash basin. This one holds 12 quarts. Found it on Amazon. It's big enough to hold a plate, so I'll just put all my dirty dishes in there. Dishwashing detergent. This is way watered down, and it's got a sprayer from Simple Green container. You can see the greenness of it. So I buy bulk
dishwashing detergent, put a little bit of, or fill it up most of the way with water, and then just put a little bit of dishwashing in there. The less soap, the better. When you're rinsing, you don't waste as much water. And I figure, I'm told that plants like soap, but there's no sense putting too much soap on. And since I'm putting most of this water out on the garden, less soap is better. So I can spray a little bit of soap on the dish and wash it and then rinse it off. And I can rinse into the blue bucket, and that is an actual real faucet. And when I built the house, I ran PEX plumbing, but the first few months I lived in it, I didn't have any fixtures. So I did the shower first, and then sometime later I added the sink faucet. I don't waste the water. I just grab the bucket, carry it outside, dump it right on the garden. So I mentioned the shower from last night. Typically, I'm trying to shower every other day or every third day. Summertime, it's every other day. Now, it would be nice to shower every day, but until we get monsoon, I don't want to run out of water, so I'm stretching it just as long as I feel like I can. Here's the bright spot. Sun will be there in about 4 or 5 minutes. Yeah, you can kind of see where it's brightest. It used in the as a solstice, this bump right here is about where sun came up. It didn't come up on this one. And then due east is about here. And wintertime, sunrise will be way over here. But the house is aimed pretty close to due east. Not quite exact. I didn't quite get it right, but it's pretty close. Just in case you aren't a follower of the channel, that's the school bus. I used to live in that up until a year ago. I've been in the house now for about a year. So this is the house. This is landscaping cloth over the window to help block the sun coming in. That's the only 2 windows on the whole house. Okay, the sun is just coming up and it is 6:29. Yeah, it was as early as 6:25 this year. 16. Oh yeah, so it's 6:29 in the morning, July 16th, which is a Thursday. Okay. Anyway, and you just, what I do, I just keep making videos, and you never know which ones are going to do well. But looking at the list here, I made a video about a little trailer that I rigged up to pull behind my bicycle because I don't have the truck, and it was hard to carry packages home on the backpack on the bicycle. Well, that's only been up for 3 days. It's already got 150 views. I mean, it wasn't even a build video. It was just kind of like, well, I took a cart I already had, I made a hitch, I hooked it up to the bicycle, I didn't think that would do very well. Internet is not incredibly fast, but it works. That's what I got to keep thinking is, it didn't used to work. Reply. Comment replied to. And meantime, yeah, now the oatmeal is nearly cooked. Just being able to sit here in the morning, drink my coffee, eat my oatmeal, read my email. Now that I have internet, that's one of the coolest things ever, is now I can just sit here and do this for a while. The electric bike project. Because I realized I wasn't desperate to get it finished, that gave me a little bit of time. I've been able to, I can easily ride the bicycle that I have. I'm not even riding the good bike. I'm riding the single speed bike. It more of a matter of the frame fits me better. The other bike was too small. It was the only bike I could find that day at Walmart. I didn't realize that in the pandemic everybody went out and bought bicycles. They couldn't keep up. I went to 2 Walmarts before I found one bicycle that would fit me at all, and it was too small, really. Still managed to ride that one 100 miles getting home one time, and then I decided, I'm not going to ride this bike anymore. It hurts me. Because it works, and it works with the trailer, that's let me kind of slow down and decide, what do I really want to build, right? So if I'm going to sit there and spend the time trying to weld something, I might as well make it do what I want it to do. Okay. So if I take parts off of the black bike that I don't really like, I can use them to build the new bike. And then I can add the electric onto it. So in the beginning, I wanted to be able to put together a system which is motor and enough batteries that could get me from here to El Paso and back. Well, that's a heck of a long drive on a bicycle, you know, motor or not. And it's a huge requirement for batteries, so I was setting the bar really, really high. But the other option was to go to Van Horn, which is the other direction. There is a grocery store there, there is a hardware store there, and they've got a dollar store. That's the nearest dollar store, and that's 50 miles from here to there. So it's half the distance of going to El Paso. So that's a little better. Okay. By taking the bicycle and building the trailer, I've worked through some of the questions. One issue is I am strong enough to do the ride, so I don't really need the electric to work, but the electric would make it faster and it would let me go farther. The next thing I realized is sitting on top of a traditional bicycle, because I'm getting older. I mean, I'm not old, but I'm 53. Sitting on top of the bike on a really rough, loose, sandy, gravelly road, which is the first 2/3 of the ride, it hurts. You know, I mean, you know, you could get a better seat, but it's like, it just pounds you. The bike I don't like has suspension, front suspension. The bike I ride has no suspension. But like my arms and my wrists, especially when I was wearing the backpack carrying everything, that's a long way. And so I started looking into these quads and these trikes. You sit down reclining on kind of like almost a lawn chair. So your whole body is supported instead of sitting there leaning forward with all the weight on your wrists. I could rig a little roof over the top of it for shade, which out here in the desert, that would be wonderful. You know, I don't even care if it goes any faster. I'm biking about 10 miles an hour on the average, so it's not terrible. If I was going to spend the money that I don't have, a tadpole trike with no motor is at least $1,500 and up. But out here, I think the quad would be the way to go. You'd have two rear wheel drive and 2 front wheels for steering. You'd sit down lower, and that's another thing, is you get out of the wind on a day where it's windy. Yeah, that would be huge. Alright, sometime later, breakfast is done. It's 7:30 in the morning. I got 11.8 volts on the battery. It just is starting to come up, so the sun is high enough. Now the sun has been over the hill for an hour, but it's not high enough to hit the panels until about 7:30. So we're just now to the point where the sun is coming up. Anyway, for quick washing dishes, I just give them a little shot of the dish soap. And a way to cut down on water, because I've already got, you know, like a gallon of water of, you know, used water in here, right? Why not reuse that? If you just, I mean, you would never think of this kind of stuff when you're, you know, when I lived in my apartments, you know, you just wash your dishes, run the water down the sink, you don't really think about it. Get them clean and then a freshwater rinse at the end. That way you didn't waste as much water. About pretty much a gallon a day is what I'm running in the sink, and that'll go out to the garden. Anyway, get it mostly clean, and then a quick hit with the fresh water. And that water is going back in the bucket again. We're still wasting some water, but the fact that, you know, a lot of this water was already used once, you know, yesterday evening washing dishes, and then we're going to use it again by dumping it on the garden. So, you know, a gallon a day for this kind of thing isn't so bad. I've got about 400 gallons right now in the main tank. So I guess, yeah, I do have running water. I can pump water from the tank. I just open the tap, the pump starts running, and we get water. But if I've got water in my essentially slop bucket was the technical term. I can reuse some of that to get the dish clean, and then I just rinse it with clean water. And then that means I used less water in the process. Boil that water. I'm going to put the boiling water in the slow cooker. That gets it started a little faster. And then we'll start the slow cooker on low for the next hour or so, and then by 9 o'clock the deep freeze will come on, but also by then the sun is high enough we're putting out more power. I can switch this over to high then. I recently bought, let's see, from Sam's Club I ordered 25 pounds of rice. That was delivered to the post office. Then I only had to go 15 miles to get the rice instead of going into town. Well, I've heard people say that beans and rice has most of the nutrients you need. So that's in there with the beans. Get this on here. And that's on low. That way it's kind of preheated before it even starts, right? I don't see them very often, but there is scorpions around here, so it's probably best if you don't put your boot on with the scorpion. Always when you come outside. Quick pause, make sure. I have only seen 3 snakes this year, and it was actually probably 2 snakes. Second one was probably the same as the first one. Or no. Second and third snake were the same snake. That's the one that I had to kill. I don't like killing stuff. But if you got a snake that's always coming back, it's probably best to kill that one. Could call this the Texas Wildlife Report. Yesterday I had a tarantula, today we got this guy. It's about 4 inches long. Alright, the bees have some water, so we'll wait a little bit. They are really on it this morning. In the cool of the day, they get pretty busy. And another one here that's got a little more water. I put washcloths in there because they can suck the water out of the washcloth, and the washcloth wicks the water up out of the deeper part. So they just land on the washcloth. It also gives them a place if they get stuck in the water. They swim a little bit and then they can crawl out of the washcloth onto the rock. Seems to work pretty well. There's still some bees that are getting drowned, but much less. They used to go into the rain barrels and you would just have like hundreds of dead bees in there. So this way there's less that are dying. And they don't bother me at all. You know, I can walk right up. If I see one stuck in the water that can't seem to get out, I'll go over and pull them out. Let him crawl up your finger, and then he dries out and he flies away. He doesn't bother me at all. She, I should say. I didn't water last night. It looked like it was going to rain, but it didn't. So this is what I'm calling the utility box. So out here is the solar panels. That used to be the water heating system, but it's not in use. I cut some of the lines. That's my hot water coil that just the sun shines on 200 feet of 1-inch black flex pipe. That's plenty for a hot shower. So I'm not using those coils anymore. That's my solar panels, batteries and generator. There's the black is the generator, battery box is there. It's close to the solar panels. Charge controllers are there. Inside the battery box is the inverter. Actually, there's 2 inverters. So power comes from that, goes from DC from the batteries to AC at the inverter, and then that comes through, if we can get it in the shot, yeah. Some of the conduits I dug out to do some work. I haven't closed them up yet, so that comes from the battery box through the conduits, comes up inside the box here. There's the pumps. The power goes through the conduit. The orange wire comes from the battery box, goes into the house. There's a breaker box, regular breaker box in the house. And then the yellow comes from the house to the bus, and also these plugins. So I've got a garden hose in here that comes right off the pump, so that's what we're going to use to give water for the bees. And as soon as you open the tap, the pump has a pressure switch and it senses the loss of pressure, and then the pump will turn on. So you just turn it on. Wait, is that in the shot? Let's get that in the shot. So you turn the tap on. Here. Then the pump comes on. It's not quite as strong a flow as you'd have in your house probably, but it's not bad. It's basically an RV style pump. It's plenty to take a shower with or run a garden hose. Yeah, we'll say about that much. Try to be gentle with this because you don't want to piss off the bees, but they seem to adapt pretty well. I think they realize that water is a good thing, so you'll see them all fly up and then they'll come back a little bit. And yeah, I'm not wearing a hood or a mask or anything like you would for beekeeping. They don't defend this. If I went after their hive, that would be a completely different story. But they don't bother me at all. I've never had them go after me. About housekeeping. Yeah, these might just dust off. I'm going to go grab a rag and see if I can wipe them off. It's better than nothing. Honestly, you could do this kind of stuff every day and there would be some benefit. But there comes a point where you would waste your entire day doing maintenance and not get anything else done. So, but I wanted to get it done, so I had to run the generator. And the water does run off a lot better, then it doesn't get spotted so much. They're clean and shiny. It's good to clean them once in a while. Every little bit helps. You do get sun and power through a layer of dust and cloudy days and so on. Alright, take your time when you're looking in here, because you never know what you're going to find. I have found mice. I managed to knock the tail off a lizard accidentally. One of my neighbors says he had a snake in his battery box. That one wasn't the poisonous snake, but still scared him, he said. I could see that. Okay, on this side is the charge controllers, because I've got two sets of panels that don't match. I've got two separate charge controllers. They are just covered in dirt, because everything out here gets dusty. That shows that our batteries are up to 12.2, so we're getting pretty good now. This one here is the inverter. That is the Harbor Freight inverter. That's the one I'm running on now. Back in the back, the gray one, or the dark one, is a 1500 watt Windy Nation. The new one is 2000 to 3000 watt. And then we got 4 deep cycle batteries that I picked up at Sam's Club. These are Duracell brand, probably nothing especially special, but since they all got bought about the same time, they're pretty well matched. I don't get too wrapped up in amp hours and watt hours. It's just kind of like, well, is it enough to get you through the day? Most of the time it is. Minutes at 23 amps, 225. Well, if you don't have a load that's exactly 23 amps, it's not going to be 225 minutes. That's useless, right? Anyway, so these are wired in parallel. So I'm running a 12 volt system. I could run them in series for 48 volts or series and parallel for 24 volts. There's advantages to both, but I would need inverters that could handle 24 or 48 volts, and these are both 12 volt inverters. One advantage though, if you went higher voltage, you don't need as big of a wire. All right, but from then on, coming out of the cords, this is running regular 110 back to the house. So that's the batteries. So right now I've got a twist lock 30 amp connector cord going back into the battery box, and then from there it goes to a couple plug-ins. If I want to switch the whole house over, I unplug the cords from the inverter and plug them into the cords that go to the generator, and then that runs the house from the generator. The generator isn't connected to the house unless I move the cords from the inverter. That keeps me from having a mixed system. And by moving the cords over, I don't need a switchover box then, is the idea. I can also plug a cord directly into the generator, like when I'm going to run the welder, that's what I'll do. Instead of running the welder through the battery box, I'll just have it come directly to the generator. Okay, next thing is the deep freeze. It's about to come on. Up here is a timer. Look for the green light. It's literally going to come on in the next minute. So the deep freeze will come on, it'll start drawing power. It needs a certain amount of power to start, but then once it's running, it doesn't use very much. So the deep freeze, the timer, I run it from 9 in the morning until noon, and then it stays off until 2 and runs until 5. I adjust that during the year to come up with some kind of magic number that I have enough power to run it. Now, a lot of people will say that a deep freeze is probably more efficient if it runs constantly, which is true. I'm using this mostly for drinks and a little bit of leftovers. So I don't need something to stay completely frozen because I've got water that I'm going to be drinking in there. But it gets cold enough during the day that I've got ice in my drinks, which is really nice. And then by morning, like for instance now, it hasn't ran since 5 o'clock yesterday. Little thermometer, this is 56 now, because it's been over 100. Okay, but this is sitting at the top of the freezer. The stuff at the bottom, okay, that doesn't have ice in it anymore, but it's at least cold to the touch, right? But the deep freeze is nice. I mean, this is, I think it's 5 or 7 cubic feet. I honestly don't remember anymore. That was the first thing I bought when I came out here. And what I was doing then, I didn't have solar, and the batteries I had weren't very good. But I would just run this for 2 hours every day on the generator and cool it off enough to have a cold drink, basically. And I tell you what, out here, if you got a cold drink and some shade and an electric fan, your life is a whole lot better. The way I've got things done, and I honestly am trying to not do this, but it is practical. So there's a lot of clutter here, but we'll use this one for an example. This switch power strip has 3 outlets on it, or 3 power converters. One is the WeBoost, one is the router that connects to the cell phone tower. So one thing boosts the cell phone signal, the next converts cell phone into an internet signal for the phone and the laptop. And then I've also got a Wi-Fi router that are tied all together. So those 3 things get used together at the same time. When I'm not using them, I can just reach back, turn off all 3 at the same time with that power strip. That's the whole idea of a power strip. Now most people, if you were at home, you would leave your Wi-Fi on all the time, so that it would be available whenever you just decided you wanted to look at something. If I'm not actually using it, I got to remember to turn that off. It doesn't use very much power, but it does use some power. So if I don't need it, why am I using it, right? So if I turn everything off that doesn't actually have to be used, and if I don't brew coffee right now, for instance, then that lets the solar recharge the batteries, and I've got more power for the evening. Okay. Now by noon, I've got more power than what the batteries can absorb, and so that's a good time to run the coffee maker. It's a pretty good load, runs for a few minutes. I make coffee, I come over here, I refill my thermos. Now I've got coffee for the next day, because in the morning I may not have enough power to make the coffee. Now I've got options. I can heat up water on the propane stove, and I've got a little French press that works really good for making coffee. That's fine. It does, it tastes good. I like it, but then I'm using propane. Eventually I use up the propane, and then I have to go refill it. If I can use electricity automatically refills every day. That's the way you got to look at it. So anything that you can do with solar is one thing that automatically gets recharged every day. Even on the cloudiest of days, I'll get some sun. I may not get a lot of sun. So for instance, I don't do laundry on cloudy days, right? I think I get aerobic activity from screaming at the internet. It's like, just work! Anyway, yeah. When I had my truck, there were times, even after having the internet out here, I would just like, nope, that's it. Grab the laptop, grab the phone, jump in the truck, drive into town. There was a few spots I would park that were off the road and had really good cell phone coverage. And it was faster to drive in to get something done and then come back out here than it was to just sit out here and try. Now without the truck, it's a little harder. So I have actually thought about taking the bicycle in and then having like a lawn chair and a little shade umbrella and my laptop. I'm like, yeah, I can just see that sitting next to the road. All my camping stuff set up just right next to the landfill. That would be perfect. Yeah. I am at the point in my life, I am so often disappointed by technology lately. It's weird. It's like technology is getting better and better and better, but it feels like it's more and more annoying the older I get. The electric bicycle project, for example. I think it'll be worth it when it's done, but there are so many little fiddly steps in between that even though I spent a lot of money on the parts, they're just sitting there on the workbench because I just don't want to mess with it right now. But if you only do it one day a week, is it worth the trouble it's going to take? This is the uniform of the day. Bluetooth headset, safety glasses, hat, we are ready. Pants, I'm wearing pants, just in case there's any doubt. I've got a process, I'm not sure if it's going to work, so I just need to make a piece, weld it, see if it's going to stick. What this is going to be for is steering spindles for a go-kart type vehicle. From there, so the first one I'm just going to cut a piece and not worry about actual finished dimensions, just make a test piece that I can basically see if I can break it or not. So that makes it easy. So what I've got, there's a bit of a gap there I'd like to close up before I weld it. I'm going to give it as much of a shot as we can and then see if this is going to work at all. Smaller gap, then I can close that. These are the wheels we're going to use. They're 20-inch cart wheels. They're basically bicycle motocross wheels-ish, something like that. Okay. Then we would have this piece welded onto the head of the bolt. And we could pivot from here to steer. And then we would have an arm coming out here that pushes it back and forth to turn the wheel. That's basically how it works. The hard part with a project like this is, I mean, that's not a huge pile, but you know, we end up with grinders and welders and chop saw, and then all the metal and the bits and the bobs and then the wheels, and you know, it's just, if you could walk out to the shop and it would all be sitting there and you just would plug it in and turn it on, right? But out here, I can't leave things out, and if I get started earlier in the morning, this side is in the shade, so Eventually, I do want to build a big shade roof that comes off the back of this, because that would be pretty cool. If I had a roof that came all the way out to here, I'd have shade until middle of the afternoon anyway. That would be alright. But a couple months it'll start cooling off. It'll be easier to work outside. That's the hard thing, is it's July. It's hot.